Titleist is the number one ball in golf. Yes, being number one is a number, and more players trust the Pro V1 or Pro V1X than all other golf balls combined. But being number one is more than a number. It's a mindset. It's a relentless mission to design and manufacture the best performing golf balls in the game, so you can chase whatever your number one is. Titleist, the number one ball in golf.
Hello and welcome to episode 130 of The Thing About Golf, Golf Australia magazine's ongoing search for the answer to that question: why do people get so obsessed with this game? Rod Murray with you, but it's John Huggan who's in the hot seat this week as he catches up with one of the game's genuine characters of recent decades, 2002 PGA champion Rich Beem. Those who watched it live will surely forever remember the last 5 holes of that tournament. Tiger charging, Beem holding on. It remains one of the most compelling hour and a bit of golf television in my lifetime. What a thrilling ride Beem gave us that week, and how he has blossomed into an excellent contributor to the game through his TV work since. Beem sat down with Huggy recently for what was an entertaining chat about life, golf, TV, and the universe. I hope you enjoy Rich Beem with John Huggan.
Okay, welcome to the latest edition of the Thing About Golf podcast. My guest this time around is a famous name and increasingly a famous voice, certainly on my side of the Atlantic. Rich Beem, former PGA champion. What was and is the thing about golf for you?
My dad, more than anything else. Yeah. My dad was a PGA professional for over 25 years, and that was his job. And I just remember as a little kid waking up on Saturday mornings and going to work with him at a White Sands Missile Range Golf Club, a little 9-hole golf course on a military base, and going out there and Dad would, pull the carts out, you'd get the grill fired up, open the pro shop, sometimes go mow a green or two. It wouldn't be shocking to see him, making breakfast, cooking some days. He just did everything. And I was always intrigued by that because, you think of what a golf professional is these days, and I don't think a single one of them would know what to do with a mower. And I'm not too sure anybody can cook a bacon roll, So Dad did it all. And it was just him, and I was in awe of that. I've always thought that was like the coolest thing ever. And so it was just any memory I have was with Dad playing golf, and then his dad would come over, and I loved to play golf with my granddad. Mm-hmm. It was always a blast, but it's obviously because of my dad and obviously my granddad too. But it was kind of like a family thing more than anything else. But again, my earliest memories and fondest memories, so to speak, are just of those early days when I was a kid, and waking up way too early for a kid and going out to the golf course with Dad and helping out any way I could.
What did watching your dad do all that instill in you, do you think?
I think it gave me a different appreciation for what it takes to be a good professional. You hear so many times, oh, he's a great guy, great professional. Is he?
Yeah. What does that mean?
What does that mean? Is he nice to the members? Is he a good player? Is this and that? There's another couple guys, Dave Potus comes to mind. Dave is most recently retired head pro at Bel Air Country Club. It's a nice, high-flying place. But Dave is there at probably 4:30 in the morning, and he's opening up the pro shop. He's making sure the people that need to be there are there. Again, he's out there pulling up carts because that's what he does. Midwestern, born and raised in Minneapolis, Minnesota. But, even though he's out there in a coat and tie at 5:30 in the morning, he's getting it done. He's making sure that golf course is ready when the members get there. And if something's out of place, he'll go fill in. And it's not just about the stuff you see when you walk in the pro shop. It's the stuff that happens back behind the counter, back, in the locker room, in the cart barn, in the bag room, anywhere. And to me, that's what makes when pros aren't afraid of of getting their hands dirty and doing what it takes. That to me is a great professional, because they're doing everything that it takes to make that whole operation, not just the pro shop, not just him, the whole operation better.
Yeah. I always think the club pros and the head greenkeepers or the greenkeeper staff in general are the kind of unsung heroes of every country club, golf club, whatever you want to call it.
It's funny. Growing up as a kid, again, after college, I went to go work at a golf course in South Dakota. And during the summer, I don't want to say they required, but when kids went away to college and went and go play college golf, once they turn 18, they're still able to practice and play out there, but they have limited times.
Yeah.
But to kind of see around that, I knew probably a half a dozen guys that would come back and playing college golf, and they'd work on the grounds crew, and they'd wake up way too early and go out there and work until, 9, 10 in the morning. They'd work for 4 or 5 hours, and then sometimes they'd have to stay if it was bad weather or something like that to get the water out of the bunkers and things like that, which, it tends to do up in that part of the world, the summertime. But, they would sit there and do it. And I think they had a better appreciation for the game of golf. And I know a couple of them now, and we still, every time we call, every time we talk, it's like we reminisce about the days, because I was working in the pro shop and they were out there on the golf course, and I'd see them and they'd be in these wading boots and, just have mud and gunk everywhere from a rainstorm, and they're trying to clean it up the next morning and things like that. But they just had a great appreciation for what the golf course looked like when you went out there to play it.
Yeah.
And so I think that, those are most definitely the unsung heroes. I mean, you just can't, you can't say enough about the people that actually take the time and do the work. And I've known, many superintendents over the years. And again, it's just like, I don't want their hours. Their hours are atrocious.
Yeah. It does seem like certainly the way with the money that's involved in professional golf these days, or potentially, these kids they're told they're special from a very young age, and they never really appreciate. They work hard at their golf, but they don't work hard at anything else.
That's the way of the world, though, isn't it? I mean, it's not just the golfers. It's, look at tennis years and years ago when you'd have these teenagers that were dominant in the game. Now it's been a little bit more mature, with Djokovic being in his 30s, being world number one. Rarely do you see teenagers dominating. But I mean, I think that from just an early age in any sport, if you're not focused solely on that, you're kind of going to get passed by. Long gone are the days where, kids are playing, in America, they're playing soccer, baseball, basketball, golf, tennis. They're a multi-star athlete. They
specialize quicker now, though.
Oh, absolutely. You have to be. I mean, if you just look at the way everything's going, I mean, IMG Academy was the first kind of, for me anyways, was the first kind of specific place to go be a star athlete, whether it was in, America football or baseball or basketball, golf, tennis. IMG Academy was the first place you could go to become specialized in that sport. So parents would send their kids away to come specialize in whatever it was. And no longer are the days where, I mean, I remember having a good conversation with Dustin Johnson about this. My son is 6'5". He is my kid. I can promise you that. He's got the same smart.
Are you married to a very tall woman?
No. We're gonna blame all this on the Tyson chicken market, But but I was sitting down with Dustin one morning at the match play, and Michael, my son, came in with me, and it was Saturday morning. I remember clear as day. And I said, "Hey, DJ, what would you have? What would you suggest, to a kid like mine who's tall, gangly, he's coordinated, but not as coordinated as he should be." He goes, "Play every sport you can." And I never thought about that. But I mean, it
gives you ball sense, doesn't it?
It gives you awareness of your body. It gives you awareness of everything. My son was a basketball player, but then kind of gave that up to focus more on golf, because the high school he went to had the number one team in the country, not just the state of Texas, in the country. They were the number one team in golf. And it's unbelievable these kids are putting up. And he kind of gave up, playing basketball, but he still, do it. But, DJ said, listen, the coordination you get from every other sport can do nothing but help you in the game of golf. And that's why I think you see, tennis players and the eye-hand coordination. You see a lot of athletes that are able to come to golf, and they pick it up pretty quickly because of the fact that they come from a different sport, but they can take what they know how to do in that other sport and relate it to golf and make it their own.
Is that what you did as a teenager?
Yeah, I played everything. I mean, I certainly wasn't a very good basketball player, but, as a kid, growing up in Berlin, I played soccer, played on the soccer team as much as I could, or every year. We went outside to do stuff as a kid. We didn't sit inside. And golf was almost a secondary thing to me, even though my dad was still a professional and I still loved the game and played it a lot. I mean, the access to the golf course wasn't the easiest thing for me. So I did everything else under the sun.
Well, at what point then did it occur to you that golf was the thing? I mean,
probably when I was 28 and made it on the tour. No, it's funny because when I, growing up overseas, I spent 7 years overseas, 3.5 years in Panama and 3.5 years in Berlin, all due to my dad's job.
This is Berlin, Germany.
Berlin, Germany.
Oh, I thought you were some town called Berlin in America you were talking.
Oh, no. I spent 7 years overseas, 3.5 in Panama and 3.5 in Berlin, Germany. And again, my dad's job, he worked for the government as a civilian.
How's your German?
It's crap. I can order a beer in German.
Well, there you go.
That's about it.
So can I.
It's funny because I should have stuck with Spanish, but when we moved from Panama to Berlin, I got into a Spanish class and it was a lot more advanced than I was expecting it to be. So I dropped it and decided to I really wanted to do French because all the pretty girls were in the French classes, but I gave that up after a week because I couldn't handle it.
Right. Yeah.
So the golf wasn't really, it wasn't really close by. The golf course was probably 20 miles away or something like that. And so getting from point A to point B was never that easy. And so once we moved back to the U.S., when I was a senior in high school, when I was 17 years old, I kind of started picking it up again full time because it was right there. And that's kind of about when I took it seriously. But it's golf has just always been in my DNA. I mean, I can't imagine my life without this game.
What level did you get to then when you started to excel? I mean, you don't get to be a tour player winning the tour and winning a major without standing out at some point.
John, you're not going to believe the story, but I mean, literally, I played college golf, I won once at my home event. Never played in the U.S. Amateur. Right after college, I went to go work as an assistant pro for 2 years. And then after that, I gave it up for a year, went and sold cell phones and car stereos. As the story goes, then I went back in 1996 to go work at El Paso Country Club as assistant pro. And in probably the spring of 98, something happened. And all of a sudden I started shooting ridiculously good numbers and winning every small tournament that was
available. What age are you at this point?
27 and 28.
See, that's ridiculous.
But it's not, because here's the thing about it.
It's unusual, at least.
It's unusual. There's no doubt. But this is what I always keep telling my son, because my son, these kids are so much better than him in his high school golf.
Yeah.
And I said, buddy, and this is the God's honest truth, buddy, everybody peaks in golf at different times. How many kids did you know growing up that were unbelievable players shooting in the 60s as teenagers that never saw the light of day as a professional?
Yeah, it happens. Yeah.
It happens. And so I just kept instilling him, and this is just from my personal experience, but I've seen it with other professionals. Everybody gets better at their own pace. You don't have to be a phenom at the age of 12. Like most kids. I mean, look at Tony Finau. Tony Finau, it took him a long time to get to where he was. He had to start building his way up, and he didn't get out there till he was 28. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of things going on, but it's just, I think though that, from my standpoint though, it was the environment that I was in. It was I had access to hitting balls every day, before work, after work, things like that. I got a chance to play 3 times a week, which for an assistant pro, that's a lot, as you know. Yeah. And I just, I just took it to heart, and I immersed myself into it. And again, something happened. I got better, and it was mind blowing how good of numbers I was shooting. When I was working that summer in '98, I was a +7. And it was funny because we would have guys from the Korn Ferry Tour, then the Nike Tour, but Korn Ferry Tour, and some other guys that were chasing it, this and that had El Paso ties and whatnot. And they would show up and they'd want to play in the Friday game. That was always the big deal. Go and play the Friday game. You can make some money. Yeah. You played well.
Can imagine.
But they would show up, and the head pro, Cameron Doan, who's my close friend and still my instructor, he made a rule. It says you have to play to the lowest handicap of my assistant pros or any of the pros in the pro shop. And so these guys would walk in and like, all right, Friday game, can I get in? Absolutely. You're a +7. What? You have to play to a +7. I'm not playing to a +7. See that guy right there folding shirts? He's a +7.
Yeah.
He's on the USGA handicap because they made us keep USGA handicaps. Because that guy right there folding that shirt, he's a +7. If you can't beat him, you ain't beating anybody. And so they'd tee it up and they'd get waxed.
That would be back when +7 actually meant something.
That's when I literally
the new
was a
handicap system now. It's just
I
don't understand.
Literally I don't know either. Back then it was to take the 2 high ones, throw it out, and then take one of the lowest ones and throw that out, and then it was just a mixture of the other ones. Yeah. But I literally, it was par 71, and we played a quota game. If I didn't shoot 64, I was not winning any money. And I had to shoot 64 every day. And I promise you, when I had to, I shot 64 or better.
How did you get from there to the tour then?
Well,
something must have happened.
Well, I went through the year prior and consequent years before that. If you won your assistance tournament in that section, like the Sun Country section would be New Mexico and Southern Texas. And if you won the assistance championship in your designated section, you got to bypass the second stage back in the day. So I went and won. And basically I walked in on Monday after I won, and my Cameron says to me, it says, you know what, you need to do 2 things. You need to either quit and go play full time, and I'll help you get the money. I'll help raise it, all that, or we need to find you another job. You're good, but you're not quite fit for the country for catering to the country club.
That's a nice way of putting it, isn't it?
It was the only way it was the most delicate way that he could put it. But and to be fair, I'd kind of lost interest. I'd be more fit for a public golf course, or I could tell people to go pound sand. Mm-hmm. Doesn't really work in the country club environment.
No.
So
they expect better.
Going to Q school kind of intrigued me. So, but I didn't get that by, sadly. So I had to go through all 3 stages, and I got through the first stage in Arizona. I got through the second stage in Houston, and then went to finals that year. And the year that Mike Weir won it.
I was going to ask you who won it, if you remembered it, because I looked it up.
Mike Weir won it. But I was one of 4 players that week to never shoot par or worse. All 6 of my rounds were under par, whether it be 1 under par or 6 or 7 under par. And the last day, the day that it mattered the most, when you're sitting there just wanting to throw up every single moment, you feel like I had probably one of the stubs on the cards that we all keep. Of all the rounds I've ever had, John, I've only kept one of them, and it's from that round of golf. I know exactly where it is, but I shot 66 that final round. I hit it 33 times, and I putted it 33 times.
Bobby Jones like.
It's the most complete round of golf I've ever shot in my life. I mean, it was ridiculous. And at no point was I ever really in danger. I think on the second or third hole, I think I made about a 5-footer for par, and that was the longest putt I had to make for par the rest of the day.
Have you got any theories on why the tour goes 6 rounds? I've never been able to figure that out. What are they trying to prove with that?
I think more than anything, I think it does 2 things. I think the more rounds you play, you get a real test of who can sustain it for 6 days.
Okay, well, why not 7 or 8 then?
That's fine. No, listen, I wouldn't have a problem with that. Yeah. But I also think though that it gives everybody, if the weather's bad or something like that, they can have one bad day and still recover from it. 4 days, it's harder to do that. 8 rounds.
Yeah.
I think after 6, you kind of figure who are the guys that can play and who can't, because when it comes to that 6th day, I mean, you're already on edge anyways. So you've given everything you've got, and you've got to go one more round to go out and prove yourself once again. And some guys can handle it and some guys can't. The 2 guys that I played with the final round, they both made it, but one guy, he was leaking oil, and you can tell he was sputtering to the finish.
I went to the European Tour qualifying skill once, a long time ago now, but I walked around in a cold sweat. I mean, I was almost good enough as a player to had a go at that, and I wasn't quite good enough, and I knew that, which is why I wasn't there.
Yeah.
But I remember walking around. I mean, it was pathetic what some of these guys were going through.
Yeah.
I mean, and you could tell this guy's never going to make it.
Yeah. And you can see guys. I mean, there's so many stories. I forget who wrote the book about Q school, but I mean, guys are literally going over to the porta potties and puking.
Yeah.
They're literally throwing up because of all the pressure. For me, it was such a completely different experience because, I had nothing to lose. Yeah. I mean, when I got to Q school finals, I had conditional status on the Nike tour at that time. And I thought, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. Mm. So going to Q school finals, I mean, don't get me wrong, I was super nervous, but it wasn't like end of life stuff if I didn't make it. I mean, I was actually going to go play golf for a living on someplace. Yeah. It just so happens I finished 8th, and I got unbelievably good status and got into almost every tournament on the West Coast swing, with the exception of Phoenix and Palm Springs. And I only missed Phoenix by 2 spots, which back then was kind of unheard of. But
because people forget the first year on tour is hard. You don't get into everything unless you're
you don't get into
legend.
unless you've got a super agent, and you're a world beater out of college and things like that. But even those kids now, I mean, with the college programs and the way they get into PGA Tour University, the top ranked player. But I mean, let's face it, the next 5 guys will at least go to the Nike or the Korn Ferry Tour. But if they have a good enough agent, they're going to get a handful of starts.
I mean, I think that's a good thing that they've done, but it's really in response to Live that the PGA Tour's done that. I mean, they're trying to, corral the young superstars before they're tempted to go somewhere else. That seems like that to me. I'm cynical enough to think.
I know you are, and listen. If I step back and actually think about that statement, you're probably right. Mm. But then again, there are a couple of kids that would have had status on the PGA Tour that the money was too good to pass up. Yeah. And listen, you can't blame them. I mean, some kids, they're world beaters, and they, who's the kid that won the amateur, played at Michigan State, and I think he went to Live, didn't he?
Is it the Spanish kid?
No, I don't think it was a Spanish kid. I thought it was a kid from Minnesota. Went to Michigan State. I thought won at Oakland Hills years ago. I thought that I'm pretty sure he went to Live, and it didn't work out. And now I don't know where he's at. But listen, if somebody's going to dangle, let's even say $500,000 in front of you to go play, but you're playing each week for first prize of $4 million, and your family doesn't have a ton, and you don't have a ton of sponsors, backers, you don't come from a big town, things like that. It's hard to say no to that. And so, I think that the PGA Tour, just having the access is one thing, but you got to take care of some of these younger guys, and apparently they are. I remember hearing this where the kids that are just coming out, they get like this massive stipend to go play, to cover expenses and things like that. I mean, I get it. I get that part of it, but God bless. I mean, there's nothing more satisfactory than making a cut and still finishing 65th and making just enough money, John, to cover your airfare, your hotel, the caddy, your food and beer for the week, and your caddy, and maybe have $100 left over.
You sound like a man who's done that.
Well, yeah. I mean,
Once
like,
or twice.
listen. I remember going that first year, and there was a kid that played golf. He had full sponsor. He had full exemption. He played in 22 events, I think, and probably lost $200,000.
Yeah,
He
I've
never
said
made a
that to
cut.
people as well. It's a license to lose money as well, having a tour card.
Listen, it's definitely a license to lose money, but doesn't that though? But isn't that the passionate thing about it?
Well, that's how it should be. It should be a competitive.
That's exactly
it's
right.
a meritocracy. It's not a
I mean, and
trade union, if you like.
and the money these days it's mind boggling for sure. I forget what I was looking at. I was looking at some numbers and it was Tristan Lawrence. And I just kind of looked, because he's playing good at the BMW, obviously. And I was just kind of looking, at his results. And I knew he had a bunch of runner-up finishes. And it finished, where did he finish? Either 4th or 8th at the Open.
Yes, he was well up. Yeah.
But I saw, and I'm probably making this up, but I think he finished like 8th and made $800,000. I'm going, I won my first event. I won $450. I won the International, which was $880, and I won 2 weeks later the PGA, and that was $990. And this guy finishes 8th, which is not stressful.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, it is. I'm not making.
it's
I'm
certainly not as stressful.
Yeah, I'm not making fun of Tristan at all. I'm just like, I'm making fun of the money, but it's just like, holy cow, man. And you just look at the money and it's mind boggling, 62 million for
There's
everything.
a lot of guys out there, though. I mean, I say this to people who don't, follow golf. They follow golf a little bit, and they're obsessed with it. They think everybody's out there playing for history, and the money, is secondary, but the money's great. But there's a lot of guys out there who think that they're just out there making a living. They're not good enough to win a major. They know that, and they're out there they're quite happy to finish 10th a lot, and quietly win $1.5 million or $2 million,
and yet,
whatever.
But this game needs though the rank and file guys.
Hey, of course, you got to have somebody to beat.
You have to have somebody to beat, but then every once in a blue moon, somebody will come through. They'll break through, and they'll finally win after so many starts. Who won Valspar? And I'm drawing a blank on his name. Bucket hat guy, Titleist. Came over to the BMW PGA, and I had a few pints last night, so my memory is a little fogged more than anything else. But anyways, he had all these starts in the PGA Tour and finally won. And you could just see, and this guy's just like living. I mean, he's just trying to stay out there. He knows that he's on the board and
Valmati.
Yes, Peter Malnati.
Malnati, yes.
Malnati. So he's on the board, and he knows that, he's not a big proponent of the signature events, but then he understands it once it's kind of explained in a different way to him. And so he's like, listen, I'm not going to be in those events. I've got to play well in these other events to try and hopefully get up there. But I get it. I understand. So you need these guys that are grinders out there, because when they win.
Is the perfect, sorry to interrupt, but he's the perfect example. Yeah. When he went to live, he said publicly, look, he says, I'm not out here trying to win majors and think it would be great if I did, but I'm not that ambitious. This is for my family.
Absolutely. This is he says it's generational money, and God bless him for saying that, because that's what it is. and it's funny, people talk about people defecting to live. I don't say defecting. I'm like, basically what they did is they sold their business. Dustin Johnson Inc. got an offer from another corporation. He liked that offer, so he sold his business, and he sold the business to them and went to go work for them. That's all he did. It was a purely monetary transaction. The guys that kind of bummed me out were when they were suing and to get back and whatnot. Like, wait a second, but you just sold your corporation, you sold your business and made money on it, but you still want to come play in the company softball tournament every year. They're not leaving your I'm sorry, but not leaving your picture on the wall when you leave, when you are a CEO and you go to another corporation. They kind of tend to take your picture off the wall, don't they?
Well, Louis Oosthuizen's the perfect example of how to do it. He played on this tour, your DP World Tour, for a long time, decided to go to live, wrote a really nice letter, apparently, to the DP World Tour people, saying, thanking them for their contribution to his career. I've decided to do this, and I'm off. And he's never said a bad word since.
And that's how it should have been done. And I didn't know that. I mean, I just got tingles because what a beautiful gesture that is. There's room in this world for live. I know we've kind of gotten off topic a little bit.
No, that's fine.
There's room in this world for live, and hopefully we'll see a time and a place where
you
everybody.
have a problem with the moral argument, which seems to have died down over time. But
again, I think if I know that Randall Chambly and Eamon Lynch are on that.
Yeah.
I drive a big Ford F-150 truck. I know that gas that I'm pumping is not coming from anywhere inside the United States of America. I don't look at it as a moral argument. I'm beyond that in so many different ways. But listen, people, if you look at this planet, and I forget where I saw this, but this really made me put things into perspective. Like, if you look at this entire planet right now, everybody that's on this planet right now, we're here for a snapshot in time. The people in 1900, they were there for a snapshot in time. This place is going to carry on whether we're in it or not. But to be a part, sharing this same space with you, with Coulthard, Dame Laura right there, to share this time and space right now is pretty damn unique. Because in 2 generations, if it's even that, nobody's going to remember us. Nobody's going to care about us.
No.
Nobody's going to care about us.
Why would they?
Why would they? But, and so we're sitting here, we're occupying the same place, and yet we're trashing other people's views and policies and this and that. And it's just like, guys, you're not that significant, and I don't care what arena you're in. It's not a political statement at all. You're not that important. We need to figure out how to do better and just live. If that country has its policies on how it treats its people, I'm glad I'm not there.
Let's cut to the chase then. How would you like to see this end up? All this talking.
I would, in a utopian world, I would like to see a world tour that looks like F1, where there's 24 events around the globe. You've got the top 70 some odd players in the planet playing, and they go all over the world to go play. They have to travel. They have to promote this game, which is giving them all the wealth in the world. I mean, there was a certain player that had a really good year, and he went over to the Middle East and played, and then went somewhere else in the world and played. And when I got back, I asked them how they liked it, and they said it was the most miserable time. They couldn't stand it. They were like, I can't get past the jet lag. I couldn't do this. I couldn't do that, blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm pretty sure that you probably flew either up close to the pilots or you had your own 2 pilots.
Yeah.
You probably didn't stay in a room that was less than about 3,000 square feet. You probably got a U-Haul full of cash. And you got 2 weeks to go see a completely different part of the world than you'd ever seen before. And you didn't like it. And I just thought to myself, that rubbed me the wrong way. Now, I only played a brief stint on the European tour, but these guys that go from South Africa to the Middle East to Asia, back to Europe, and then back down in South Africa and Middle East to finish their time, that to me is how you promote the game. And so in a perfect world, I'd love to see a 72 man field or whatever it is with a cut. I have to put that in there with a cut. Mm-hmm. That they travel around to the world. And again, they're growing the game globally. They're not growing the game in Greensboro, North Carolina.
I think the end result would be there'd be more rounded people and there'd be better golfers as well. I mean,
there's no doubt.
I criticise the PGA Tour. There are obvious exceptions. We could name them off the top of our head, but it's too much the same for me every week. You know, the greens are the same speed, the fairways are the same width, the rough's the same height.
I see that, and again, I'm completely understand. I totally understand, but the product works, and listen,
it makes money.
It makes
it's
money.
A business.
It's a business.
But is it necessarily the best thing for the game?
I don't know if it's the best thing for the game, but for me, what I see besides the money in there is I see the money and I hear about the money that goes to charities. Like each and every week there's anywhere from $2 to $5 million given back to the local economy, and that's not on top of. From what I remember, every time a PGA Tour event goes into a different market, that market is impacted by 20 million plus each week.
And the heroes in that are the volunteers.
Without exception.
Imagine how much it would cost every week to employ people to do what the volunteers do.
Oh, there's no doubt. Absolutely. 1,000,000%. And so it's just, it is a big machine that works. Again, though, you're right. It's the same TV show every single week, and just a different town. Yeah. There's too much of it, and I can't even believe that I'm saying this, but when I was a player, I'd have argued infinitely. We need to have 156 guys. We need a tournament every week. Oh God, am I so wrong? But when you're sitting there and that's your livelihood, it's hard to see the forest for the trees. So I just, my mind has changed quite a bit on a lot of that, but I still think that the PGA Tour's got an exceptional product. Again, they have world-class tournaments. They do amazing things for the communities that they go in, and so on and so forth. And to take that away, I mean, just thinking about those communities and how they'd be impacted it'd be pretty significant.
Here's my, not worry or concern, but the guy that you just cited as the guy who didn't like to travel. My worry is that multiply him by 20.
Yep.
And you're going to get the situation where these talks are going to fall apart. And the PGA Tour is going to go off and do its PGA Tour thing in America, and something else is going to evolve. It's going to be everywhere else in the world except America. And that might not be the worst thing for the European Tour or anybody else.
It may not be the worst thing for the game of golf because, if these guys are really true to what they say, they want to beat the best players week in and week out. If you're saying you want to beat the best players week in and week out at Pebble Beach or at Cog Hill or at Atlanta Athletic Club or East Lake, how about we go over to, I don't know, a golf course in Japan? I'm not familiar with golf in Japan. To be fair, that's one place on my bucket list that I'd love to go to. I haven't been to Japan.
Australia, but this is a Golf Australia product, and I hammer on about this. People listening will be tired of it. But Australia would be a big beneficiary of the talks falling apart. You'd be a month in Australia as part of this world tour.
And see, that's just it. I mean, and I know these young guys have families, and I'll use Scotty Scheffler as a perfect example. Young man, world number one, has a little one. I'm sure there's another one coming along in short order. But, what happens in 2 years let's say 5 years when he's got, a 5 and a 7 year old, and they're going to school and he's got to disappear down to Australia for 3 weeks. Now, listen, we took our kids everywhere with us because we could. We put them in private schools just because we could pull them out, and we made sure they did the homework on the road and this and that and all that. But, losing valuable time with your family is definitely in these guys' mind, and I can't blame them. But again, though, there's ways of getting around it. I'm sorry, but Jack Nicklaus wasn't always there with his kids, when he was traveling around the planet.
5 of them. Yeah.
Gary Player, was not around. Ernie Els, in normal days. Even John Rahm. Wife had a baby on Monday, and he flew out on Tuesday to go to Spain. Yeah. Good for him. He could have bailed out and said, you know what, I can't make it, but he wanted to go and support Spain.
He's in a situation where he needed to play, though.
And I'm just kind of looking at the family aspect of it more than anything else. But I just think that there's always going to be an argument why guys don't want to go. But I'm sorry, but if you truly love this game, as much as I do, as much as I think you do, go go where they want you to play. I mean, if you're on the road for 2 or 3 weeks, you can figure out a way to get your family out because you know what? I've taken my kids to Australia. I've taken my kids with me in 2012 all around Europe. I even had my son arrested in Ireland, which is awesome. He was 8 years old.
What did he do? You can't let that go.
He was just following me around. I don't know if I have a picture on my phone of him. He was just following me around the Pro-Am. And we got up to the tee at Royal Port Rush on, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the par 4 down the hill. Mm. There's 2 officers. I'm like going, where are you protecting us from? I mean, like, there's nobody's going to walk through that field to get over this. Yeah. And he goes, yeah, we got to be up here. I said, hey, do me a favor. Go arrest my kid because he doesn't have his badge on him. And he's like, and so they put his hands behind his back. I took a photo of it. It was pretty sweet. But, my kids remembered that, and I think that traveling with your family abroad because of your job is a good thing. You get to see, and it's not like they're going to be in any danger going to wherever they go play. It's a good thing, if they stagger the timings right and things like that. I mean, you could have 2 or 3 tournaments abroad, give you some time to catch up on your sleep, to get acclimated to that time zone. But I mean, it would be, and again, you asked, in a perfect world, I would have a world tour of 24 events of 72 guys with a cut, and
you have a promotion and relegation system going
it's the same thing. Exactly right. And I still think then I would also take the DP World Tour and the PGA Tour and combine them. I'd think, listen, you've got to play, half of your events are going to be, 3/4 of your events are going to be in the US because that's where the biggest money is. And then the other events are probably more contained to Europe, and all that. But I think that it can do nothing but make golfers better overall.
It's always my argument. There'd be better players, or certainly more interesting players to watch.
There'd be more interesting players. And again, it's not that easy, but when you get on a roll in the US and you're that good of a player like Scotty Scheffler is, you can understand why guys are, because you said it, the courses are not the same, but they are the same. You can get on a roll. If you can get on a roll by playing Singapore, Malaysia, Japan in 3 weeks, if you can win 2 out of those 3, now we've got game.
Yeah, I mean, it's never a criticism of their talent level. It's a criticism of the fact that they're incredibly good.
I mean, Scotty Scheffler is unbelievable. Again, though, you learn how good your game is when you travel. Because you think, I know when I came to the European Tour, I thought, you know what? I'm gonna find my game again because the courses are going to be a little bit easier. They're going to be a little bit not as good, but I'm going to find my game again over here. And what I found was that these guys can go to each and every different grass each week in and out and figure out a way. I was like, oh my God. I mean, I can't tell you how much I learned and how badly I got beat up when I came over in 2012. I loved every second of it. I'd do it again in a millisecond. But I mean, you learn how to play golf over on the DP World Tour.
Your golf ball is the most technologically advanced, or it's not. Your golf ball is either the most consistent, or it's not. It's the most trusted, or it's not. The fact is, it's either Titleist, the best performing golf ball in the world, or it's not. Prove it for yourself. Titleist, the #1 ball in golf. What will you play?
Well, let's talk about the one huge week in your career where you did figure it out. We can't not talk about winning the PGA.
We were doing so good before that, though.
Well, I have to say, though, Rich, that I don't think anybody would have been betting on you at the start of the week. So
there was one person that I ran into one time, and they paid for dinner, which was nice. It was funny, John, because again, I in 1998, when I had that exceptional year, I played in 10 events, I won 7 of them, and I finished second or third in the other ones, right? So I learned how to win. Learning how to win, there's no exception for it, no matter where you're playing, whether it's local events or whether it's on the PGA Tour. And so when I won the Kemper Open, everybody was surprised. I'm like, listen, winning breeds. I knew what to do coming down the stretch because I knew what my body and mind were going to do. I knew how much I was going to freak out.
Right.
And winning the international 2 weeks prior was massive in that because I was playing really well that season. And I felt like I was going to win. I felt like something was going to happen.
She told me.
And so
I would have had a bet as well.
Yeah, I know. I wish I'd have known. I had to put a lot of money on myself as well, but because it was legal back then.
Yeah.
But you know, I was playing exceptionally well, and then I won the international, and I went up to Minnesota on Saturday because I had a Sunday outing. And my caddy and I just decided to meet Monday morning first thing. We pegged it up at 8 a.m. First guys on the golf course, and I fell in love with the place. It had really good driving lines. It had, the greens were exceptional. For me, it begged to be attacked off the tee. And I remember playing a practice round it was very boring. I played with Pat Perez, Robert Gomez, John Daly, and Fuzzy Zeller on Tuesday.
That would be boring.
Boring. Terrible.
Can you imagine?
There's no gambling, swearing, smoking. I'm sure somebody was drinking. It wasn't me, thankfully. But I remember on the fifth hole, I hit driver, over the hill, but there's a couple of bunkers protecting it. And Fuzzy says to me, "Why are you hitting driver here? It's a 2-iron or a hybrid and an 8-iron from there." I said, "Fuzzy, I got a 2-year exemption and 1.6 in the bank. I'm hitting driver everywhere." And he was like, "Okay." And I did. I hit driver everywhere. And there was every single day, I was astonished how many guys were laying back with irons on the second hole, on the fifth hole, 6, you kind of had to. And there's another hole in the back 9.
See, that sounds like you realized this was the moment, and that if you'd started to hit the irons off the tee, that you were almost wasting the moment.
Yeah, I that's how I always played, though, John. I always kind of attacked everything, and that's why I was streaky good and streaky bad. But I think it's just the fact that I loved the golf course. It was just there was something about it that was inviting to me. It was only my 4th major. I played in, I think, 2 PGAs and 1 U.S. Open.
Well, I've got your major record here.
It's abysmal.
I'm glad you said that, because you played in 41 and you missed the cut in 26 and you withdrew in another one. So only 1 in 3 were you even playing 4 rounds.
Oh, yeah.
But now you were better than that. Come on. Because that's really bad. As you just said, I mean, you're better than that.
You know what? But listen, but things also changed. That's a whole different podcast. Right. Things changed after the PGA and when things went kind of downhill a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I just, that week it was just, I don't know. I mean, it's not as the course was easy. In fact, I think the first round I made 6 pars, 6 bogeys, and 6 birdies. And I survived it. And I'm like, I know I can do better than this. And then the second day I shot 66, played beautifully, putted beautifully all week long. But I just knew that after that opening round, if I survived that round, and from there I flourished pretty good. I played really good on Saturday when it was blowing 30 miles an hour, survived it. Justin Leonard shot 69, which is otherworldly that day. But, again, I just coming off a win, and I had nothing to lose, I mean, it's like I had the world by the tail. And so don't get me wrong, I was nervous every moment of the day on that Sunday. I mean, I literally.
Could you hear the footsteps of Woods coming up behind you? How aware were you of that? When I walked off, hopefully not too aware, because
I wasn't. I mean, I was or I wasn't. But I mean, like when I left the 9th green, I looked at the leaderboard and I knew I was up by 1. When I made birdie on 13, there was a leaderboard, and it's the old school leaderboard, and they do it by hand. And they had the numbers off now that I look at it, because when I knocked that putt in, I went to 10 under par, and the next number I saw was 4 under. So I felt like, I thought I had a 6-stroke lead with 5 to go. That's when the hyperventilation starts kicking in a little bit.
Yeah.
That's when you know, like, listen, just don't fall down. And thankfully, I had about a 75-yard walk to the next tee box. And again, I didn't miss a single fairway all day on Sunday. I did on 10. It says I did on 10, but I missed it by like literally that much in the first cut.
Right.
I hit the fairway there. I got a bad break, bad kick. But I hit a middle of fairway on 14 and found a divot. And so I bogeyed there. And then that's when you started hearing the roars. 15, you heard a roar. 16, a bigger roar. 17, you heard the massive roar. And then 18. Thankfully, he was playing with Fred Funk. And I must have put in the back of my mind, said, nice birdie, Fred. Way to go, Fred. I probably did that somewhere, but I never consciously thought of Tiger because I was playing so good that I didn't feel like anybody could beat me.
Right.
But I couldn't think about anything other than breathing as well. Because I'm telling you, when I teed off on 16, my caddy goes, how you doing? I said, I want to vomit all over my foot joys right now. He goes, good. I got you right where I want you. Because he knew that I was nervous. I'm constantly taking in water. My mouth is pasty and I've got this worried look in my eyes, I'm sure. But, he was a massive calming factor for me. And we never, we didn't, I'm sure the conversation was lighthearted, whatever we did speak about, which probably not a lot because my mouth was, pretty much locked in together. But I remember on 18 tee box, he never pulls a club for me, takes the driver out, takes the head cover off and hands it to me. And I'm kind of looking at him and he goes, do me a favor. So what's that? He goes, hit this thing as hard as you can. Okay. Rifled one right down the 18th.
See, that's the easiest thing to do in that situation.
It's the easy, and that's where that's where I kind of look at this modern day player, and they've got a book they're talking about every single shot going through, a chemistry book or a physics book or something like that. And I'm kind of going, dude, it's 153. It's 148 to carry the bunker, 153 there, and 159 over it. You got 4 left of it, and the planet right of it. I mean,
it's not that hard. Yeah,
it's not hard, And so it's just it's mind-boggling because from that standpoint. But having Billy there and having him as calming influence was obviously amazing. But I just think that going back to the whole week though, it was I was in such a good frame of mind, a good space. And I wish I could put my finger on it because I know that when I go back to Hazeltine, which I do quite a bit now since my son goes to school in Minnesota, I find it to be one of the hardest golf courses I've ever played in my life.
It's changed a bit since then, hasn't it?
They've lengthened it to the nth degree, and I wish I could remember exactly where they moved some of the tee boxes from, but I mean, it's now, and I certainly don't play it all the way back, but I mean, even now though, the green complexes, they're like, I remember most of it, but it's still perplexing how well I putted that week. And I made it from everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
That's when if you're in the zone, you're in the zone.
You're in the zone. That's exactly right. But yeah, I mean, it was obviously a fantastic week. And then, the aftermath of it all is amazing. But yeah, so many great stories after that week. But I remember the small things. I remember going to lunch that week with my wife on a Wednesday because I went out and practiced for like an hour and a half and looked at my caddy. I go, what do you think? He goes, I don't know. I said, I don't think we need to do anything else. He goes, we left by 10 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. My wife and I went and had lunch, saw a movie and all that. And then I remember waking up after playing on Friday, went back to the hotel, took a nap, woke up and I looked out the window and it's still the blackest sky I've ever seen in my life. I mean, it's like this stand black outside. Yeah. And it was just torrential. And then the next morning they pumped all the golf course and all the water onto the driving range. They were hitting balls into a lake.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's just so many things I remember about the week that are amazing. But I just had a sense of calmness. I was never freaked out about anything, although nervous as hell on every shot on Sunday. But Even on Saturday. Even on Saturday, it was nerve-wracking for most of it. But
And the last question really about this is, where did the little dance come from at the end?
so
You're infamous or famous for
So-
that, whichever way you want to look at it.
I have one of my close friends, college buddy. His name is Scott Stewart. And on Wednesday of the International, I went up and played the Broadmoor with my dad, where my dad actually finished back when the NC2As was the quarterfinals. He made it to the quarterfinals. No, sorry, he made it to the semifinals at the Broadmoor his senior year and was a first-team All-American. And so I took Scott, my other roommate Charlie, my dad, and myself, and went out and played. And I had Scott beat 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. I mean, I had him dead to rights. I mean, I owned his house, his family, I owned him. And on the 18th hole, which finishes right next to the hotel and all that, I hit my second shot to about 30 feet. He hits his to about 28 feet. I barely missed mine, and he buries it to get back to all square.
Right.
I let him out. And he starts hooting and hollering and just running around, dancing like an absolute monkey. Like he is just all over the place. He's jumping up and down, rolling on the green. And I'm thinking to myself, now that's a way to celebrate. I didn't quite achieve that, thankfully, but I just thought, and I also saw Tiger whenever he went, he'd just go, oh, like this, and just like have this mean look about him. Like, dude, if I win something like that, I'm dancing, man. I'm going to have some fun.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much where it came from. I didn't get a chance to do it at the International because Steve Lowry was making me sweat too much. But at the PGA, I got a chance to dance.
A couple of things I want to ask before we finish here. We're 1 week removed from the President's Cup, which America won as per usual, quite comfortably.
Yep.
What, in your mind, is the difference between the Ryder Cup and the President's Cup for the American team players?
Well,
there's obviously a difference.
I think one of them, and this has to do with the format, I think one of them is that there's fewer matches, and it's only 2, which is really kind of strange to say, but it's only 2. But I think that those 2 points, I think we have a sense of urgency when it comes to the format. Like we need to get ahead and things like that. And we don't do well when it gets close because we're supposed to win. And I think the guys feel the pressure of it. From what it looks like, and this is changing rapidly. It seems like we have a better camaraderie of players these days. And I think that for whatever reason, it comes out at the President's Cup, probably because we've won it so many times in a row that we don't feel the heat as much.
Do you think it matters that much? I mean, the Europeans do a great job of publicly looking like we're all for one for all, and all the rest of it. And then you hear, doing what I do for a living, you hear all the little things that were actually going on during the week. There's plenty of stuff, little niggles and conflicts within the European team room, and it has been historically, but they do a great job of giving the impression that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So I think it's maybe a little bit overrated, that part of it.
I don't know. I mean,
because I've played in teams, and I'm sure you have too, where you didn't particularly like some of the other guys, and they maybe didn't like you.
Well, listen, you're not no matter what, you're not going to get 12 guys in the same room, especially that are the best at what they do.
Huge
and
egos. Yeah.
Massive egos. I think it's.
But it needs to be explained, this, because it's.
I don't know if you can. See, I don't know if you can. I mean, I don't know if you can. I mean, it's. Listen. The Europeans, they play under a continent. We play under the red, white, and blue. And it's easy to gang up on the red, white, and blue. Totally understand it.
Yeah, you're always the bad guy.
Totally understand it. But when you have Spaniards and Swedes and Irish and England, you have so many different cultures. I don't know. It's just, I don't know what it is. I think, I don't know. I think in Rome, we didn't play enough beforehand. That was mass. That was madness.
That was madness.
That was madness.
Yeah.
But I also think too, though, that if you're not going to play like that, and I asked Paul McGinley this, what would prevent the U.S. side from coming over a week beforehand
And playing the European Tour event.
or going to the site itself?
Yeah, whatever.
And playing golf in different places, but just coming to the site itself and at least getting to understand and get comfortable with it. And he says, well, you don't want to spend too much time over there. I'm like, well, it's a mini holiday.
They should have learned from Paris. I mean, the one guy who made the effort to come over and play in the French Open before that, Justin Thomas. And who was the best performer on the American team that week? Yeah. Justin Thomas.
There's no doubt that has something to do with it. I think that we come over underprepared more than anything else. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that, we don't put enough time and effort, even flying over for 2 days beforehand, like the week, like that's
it's neither one thing nor the other.
You're fighting, you're now battling time zones, fatigue, things like that. I mean, if I were the captain, I'd say, guys, unless you're playing the week before, where, in Europe, we're going over, like for Adair Manor, the next time it's on soil. Yeah. I'd say, boys, we're going over Ireland a week before. We'll play Adair, but we're going to play some other places too. And we're going to have some money games, and we're going to have, you got to whip it out, and, we'll give you a duffel bag full of money, but listen, whatever it is, but we're going over there beforehand, and we're going to get acclimatized. We're going to get tough. We're going to see the golf course. We're going to understand it better than they do. We're going to understand this golf course better than they do. And I think that would be starting point number one. I think starting point number two, in order to get the best out of your players, who's Keegan Bradley. Keegan Bradley's a captain this time. He needs to be captain in the Adair Manor as well. You need to have a home and away game. You have to do it for 2 Ryder Cups, 1 home and 1 away. Yeah. Because what you learn in that 2 years in a home game, you need to have that same information. That's what makes Luke Donald. He's going to be so prepared for Bethpage,
and yet they're still going to be underdogs when they get there.
They're still going to be underdogs, and it's going to be the crowd's going to be the crowd's going to be absurd, as we both know. The crowd is going to be team number is going to be their 13th player for sure, but having Luke Donald captain the Ryder Cup side over there is going to be a massive, massive injection, boost of confidence for the European side, because he already knows what to expect, what to do, and what he's learned in Rome can do nothing.
Yeah, he won't make the same mistakes again, because he'll make mistakes.
Yeah, nothing but help him when it comes over to Bethpage. Now, again, how it all comes out is a different deal, but I think that the European side is going to be a hell of a lot more prepared, because you can't understand all of it in just 2 years. Steve Stricker should have captained our side over in Rome. That was a layup for us, and we missed it. And again, it's just like, I get it, nothing against Zach Johnson, but even an assistant captain, you're not going to learn that much, because being the captain is, your neck is on the line. The vice captain, you can sit over in the corner and be like, well, I don't know. I think that's the biggest thing that we struggle with, is that we don't keep the same captain to go to do it 2 stints in a row, because I think to win on away soil, that's the only way you can get it done.
Before we're done here, Rich, I have to ask you about what you're doing with yourself these days, which is, you're a very familiar voice on certainly where I live, on Sky Sports. Talk me through that, if you can. Yeah,
again, the starts back in 2012 when I was on the European Tour. I missed the cut in Switzerland, and on Saturday morning, I was frustrated with the game. I was frustrated with doing it. And people had always kind of put a bug in my ear. You might be pretty good at TV. You ever thought about that? And so Saturday morning, I wandered down to the TV compound, ran into Jason Wesley, who's now my boss at Sky Sports. He said, "Listen, I'm interested in maybe transitioning." And he says, "Do you have have you done anything TV before?" I said, "No, to be fair, I haven't." He says, "We'll get some experience, and we might be looking for somebody." So 2013 and 14, I worked at the Golf Channel and NBC for, sparingly. 2014 was more live golf, which is really what I wanted to do. And at the end of 2014, Sky Sports made a commitment to come over to the U.S. starting in 2015 and having full production. And I get a phone call from Jason and said, "We'd love to have you if you're interested." And I said, "Absolutely." And since 2015, I've been with Sky Sports. I love it. I love the people. I work with the greatest degenerates in the world, as you well know.
Have you become Britishized in any ways? Does your wife say, where did that word come from?
Yeah, there's like half three, instead of 10:30, or 3:30, I say half three, things like that. There's definitely some words that have changed in my vocabulary. I drink a hell of a lot more tea than I used to. Bacon rolls are the bomb. Full English breakfasts, yes, mushrooms and beans and all that fun stuff. So I mean, driving on this side of the road makes sense every now and again. I still probably step out on the road too quickly sometimes. But there's probably some things that have changed in it. But no, I love Sky. I couldn't imagine working for anybody else. I mean, I get asked all the time, why aren't you working for a U.S. company? I said, well, A, they haven't offered, and B, I haven't pursued it.
I'm surprised that they haven't.
I haven't pursued it because and not unless they're going to pay me a ton more money. I like where I'm at. I like the people. I like what I do. I like how we do it. It's comfortable. We understand one another. I see Coulthard grinding away, trying to figure out who anybody is, even though he's seen him. Tim Barter. I mean, he's the most panicked man in the world. Yeah. And it's a little idiosyncrasies. Dame Laura, you and Murray and I have bonded quite a bit. But I just, the team is so good, and we kind of understand each other, and obviously they got a great sense of humor. You got to have thick skin to work with us, and as you well know, but it's an easy team. Now, would it be beneficial to work in the U.S.? Yeah. I mean, probably monetarily, but it's just like, I don't know. I like it.
What do you make of the standard of play on the European Tour? I ask that because I've written a couple of times now that, the 10 cards that they get for the PGA Tour now went to guys who were, none of them were superstars. And the narrative has always been that the PGA Tour is way better than the European Tour in terms of standard of play. Those guys went over there, and most of them did really well. They won tournaments. They were contending.
Yeah, absolutely.
Made the Tour Championship.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm thinking maybe the gap isn't quite as big as people think.
Oh, it's not nearly there. And again, I think it just has to do with the fact that these guys learn how to play in different conditions all the time. And all of a sudden you get to basically the same conditions week in, week out. It's got to be a little bit easier. Exactly. But the standard of play over here is amazing, as it always has been. It's just, it's just names you're not familiar with in the U.S., but there's no doubt about it. Every one of these guys can play. I really hope that not everybody defects over the U.S. I know they're going to give away 10 guys are going to go, but like this kid who won last week, Hidalgo, you guys can't lose him.
He might go. He's in contention now.
You cannot let him leave the DP World Tour. Yeah. He is too good to be an ambassador. We'll give you Billy Horschel. We'll give you Billy Horschel, but you can't. We don't Hidalgo. No, you can't let him go. He's amazing, and Billy's amazing. I said in jest, but he's what a great ambassador for the DP World Tours. And he's right. More guys should come over. The PGA Tour should end their season at the end of the Tour Championship. And if you want to come play over here.
Yeah,
do something over here. But I don't know. I know that these guys are so talented, obviously the best, the Rorys, the Shanes and things like that. Yeah, they're going to always play in the US, but coming back over here, if you notice when they come back over here, they don't necessarily dominate. They don't necessarily dominate. So obviously there's a pretty deep pool of talent here on the DP World Tour, and it's never gone unnoticed for me. But then again, I played over here for a season, and I understand that. I understand that probably better than
it just illustrates the fact that I don't think the gap is nearly as big as people think.
Oh, it's not nearly as big as people think. But then again, it's sadly though the world ranking points you don't get nearly enough because again the names aren't as big. They tend to stay right here. But I don't know. The guys over here that can play, I don't think it accurately reflects on world ranking points either. I think some of these guys are or I don't say, I guess dumbed down would be the way I'd say it. They don't get enough credit for how good they are, because you can finish 10th in the U.S. and get more points than somebody that wins in the DP World Tour just because of the strength of field. But finishing 10th is nowhere near like winning anywhere.
My last question is, do you miss anything about not playing?
Oh, all the time.
I know you play in the PGA every year.
Oh, yeah, all the time.
What does that tell you about how far they hit it?
Oh, God. Yeah, I'm done playing the PGA. I think I'm going to play one more time when it's in Frisco, Texas, just because Texas is my home state. I'll probably play there one last time. But I got to figure out how to get 20 more yards. At least. Yeah. I'll take 10. I'll take 10. I'll take anything. Yeah. Of course I miss playing. I miss the rush of excitement. I miss getting out there and trying to figure it out. And I get a taste of it when I go play, but when you're not doing it day in and day out, it becomes harder. If you're doing it full time, you're not afraid of the shots. Where now I get afraid of a shot because I don't hit them all the time. And I miss just coming out and being on the practice ground and hitting balls and knowing that if I bring my best this week, I got a chance. Now it's just like, if I bring my best, I might stick around for the weekend. And that's no way to play golf. And I still enjoy competing where most of my team doesn't anymore.
Well, you just have to content yourself with taking money off Coulter.
Oh, listen, if he would ever pay up. Oh. I mean, he's got holes in his pockets. You know that. I mean, when he walks, I mean, his feet rattle around. But yeah, but we have a nice little. We when we play in the U.S., we go out and we have a nice little crack, a lot of fun. But I do miss waking up early in the morning and being the first one on the practice ground and smelling the freshly cut grass and just being around the game and into it and the camaraderie and all that. And, because it's really weird now. You're
basically missing the locker room.
I miss the locker room, but I was never a big locker room guy. I'd rather go hang out with the caddies.
Okay.
I literally would, like rain delays, go hang out in the caddy.
That was always the big debate on the European Tour, was where was the highest average IQ, in the caddy shed or in the players' lounge? I went with the caddies mostly.
I would probably go with the caddies. The caddies have a better understanding of how the world works.
Yes, yeah.
No doubt about that. But I miss hanging out around the game. To be fair, I was never really close friends with a lot of the guys out on tour, but because everybody was trying to beat Tiger, so nobody was really friendly with anybody. Yeah. But I just, I miss just hanging out and going through the work every week. Because you never really understand how much you're going to miss it till you don't do it again. And at first you're like, oh God, I don't miss that. And now it's just like, man, I miss doing that. Thankfully, I'm going to start being able to practice and play a little bit more. We're moving into a new house right on a golf course. So I'm hopping my buggy first thing in the morning, go out and hit some balls and chip and putt and be around a little bit more. So maybe my game will be spurred on by that a little bit. But yeah, of course I miss playing every single day. I mean, there's no greater high than competing. I mean, once you've been a competitor for as long as I have, when it gets taken away, you don't miss it for an instant or two, and then you miss it. I don't miss it enough to want to do it full time, but if I could, though, I would do it I'd do one full year on the European Tour again. I would do it. That to me would be fun.
Rich Beem, thank you for your time.
Thanks.
It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely, John. Appreciate it, buddy.
You have too.
Absolutely. Been a blast. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you.
What an absolute pleasure it was to find out a bit more about the man from Phoenix. As always, a big shout out to both Huggy and Rich Beem for taking the time to bring us that chat. Well, that's it for episode 130, but I hope you've subscribed or followed the show so you don't miss an episode, including our next.
So I thought I need to become the best club pro in the country because I'm clearly not destined to ask Seve to step aside.
That's TV's Tim Barter. Next time on The Thing About Golf.